there, it's John from Tutor to You. Welcome to the Economics Teachers Staffroom. In each episode we're going to consider a major topic facing economics teachers. We're going to ask our panel of experienced practitioners to give their advice and suggestions. Here we're going to discuss managing time in economics exams. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Natalie and I teach at the Sixth Form College in Farnborough. We have about just over 4,000 students, so it's a pretty big college. I'm one of the teachers on the AQA Economics spec, and I've been doing it since the reform, so in 2015 is when I started.
Hi, I'm Nicky King. I've been teaching economics A-level for nearly 3 decades. I've taught EdXL, AQA, OCR, IB and International A-level, and have examined A-levels for more years than I care to mention. I've been working with Tutor to You, creating student resources and delivering teacher CPD for more than 20 years now.
Hiya, I'm Peter. I've been teaching economics for, this is my 16th year. I've had 15 sets of exam results now. I teach in a large secondary school in the northeast of England. I've had various jobs from head of department to in charge of theatre, and I'm now an assistant head teacher.
Hi, I'm Helen Gordon. I'm head of department at a large sixth form college in Wigan.
Hi, I'm Glyn. I've been teaching nearly 20 years. Prior to that, I had 15 years in retail operations from university. And I teach business, economics and occasionally history. I have been the head of the department. I teach in a school in Norfolk, and I've taught in 2 state schools for half my teaching time, and I've been in the independent sector for nearly 10 years now.
What's your experience of students and time management in exams?
So my experience of students' time management is pretty poor, really. Often when students have come from GCSEs, their ability to write in a particular way is not great. GCSEs work a lot on knowledge regurgitation, and so in an A-level situation where students are expected to use more skills-based answers, they often really struggle. And as an examiner and as a teacher for a number of years, I see a lot of exam papers which are incomplete.
So when I've spoken to the second years after their exams, they've always said that they felt like they had just about the right amount of time to complete their exams. No one's come out feeling stressed that they were kind of scribbling right to the last second. And what we have worked out is about 40 minutes for the 25 marker is the absolute kind of minimum of what they should be working on. And that seems to give them enough time to plan as well as write logically and with a flow. So we always try and aim that if we do kind of mocks in classrooms, that we remind them that they should be allowing themselves at least 40 minutes for that big 25 or for each 25 marker. My personal thing is I hate multiple choice questions. So I also advise for them to leave the multiple choice questions in paper 3 till the very end. So kind of give themselves 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes at the end, but do them last, because I feel like you can trip yourself up on a multiple choice question and it ends up eating into far more time than it should for 1 mark. So yeah, actually the time allowed for the exam seems to be spot on. It's just about pitching and staying strict to how long they spend on each question.
Well, in my experience, students inevitably run out of time. But what I try and put across to them is that this is actually part of the test. The exam is not designed to give you acres and acres and acres of time to finish everything and write everything down. Part of the test is actually to time you. So running out of time, that's okay.
I realised that there was often timing issues, and really I found they were from knowledge gaps. This slows students down. But also, I realised that planning difficulties, lots of students did not know how to break down questions effectively. And the third one, over-prepared answers. Lots of students still try to shoehorn memorised content in mismatched questions.
Varied over the course of my career so far, I think increasingly students have found time management a lot more difficult in exams, particularly the 3 EdXL papers. The skills and how they're assessed across the 3 papers, whilst there's some consistency in terms of papers 1 and 2 with section A, B, and all short answer questions, students still probably overcommit to spend too long on section A in comparison to what they could be spending on section B, which is the data response, which, as we know, requires a lot more reading and digesting, and then the skill of applying the data, applying the students' knowledge of economics to the data to try and tease out the information that they need. So year on year, I do find, particularly in the first set of year 13 mocks, there might be the odd student that rushes section B. And
I do feel that some of the reasons for this are students do have undiagnosed learning needs from high schools, and we spend a lot of time at college trying to identify these students and supporting them to ensure that they do complete the exam. I know it sounds like a really silly thing to say, but we say there's a lot to students that the best way to maximise your marks is to complete all the questions in the exam paper. And far too many students try to obtain 100% of the marks for a question rather than completing every question on the exam paper.
What do you do in the way of timed practice throughout the course?
So for me, I remember what I was like as a student, and homework sometimes got forgotten. So I made a vow that I wouldn't send essays home as homework, but instead we do it in class. And I build in time to my lessons to allow for students to do it under time conditions right from the word go. So I think the very first essay I get them looking at is from about week 2. I know, pretty brutal. But they do it in class. I give lots of buffer time in the early days. So even if we're looking at a 9 marker, I could give them anything up to like 20 minutes to complete it. But they do that from the start, and every essay or homework is timed conditions in the classroom.
We do lots and lots of practice of timed questions in class, and I always emphasize a mark a minute. Now, I know that's sort of, slightly flexible, but we do try and stick to a mark a minute in practice in class all the way through the 2-year course. We do what I call dynamic marking as well. So earlier on in the course, perhaps in the lower sixth or earlier in the upper sixth, our students use OneNote, and I can see what they're typing in real time. So I will be popping in and out of their individual OneNotes, and I'll be looking at what they're typing and say, right, Freddie, you need to be moving on to paragraph 2 now. And I'll encourage students that even if they've only written a sentence or 2, forget the rest of the paragraph, move on. Start getting on to the idea that this is how long I've got for each paragraph. So calling out those stage points throughout the timed question.
Tends to be some sort of assessed question once every, at least minimum once every 6 weeks. At the start of year 12, it's more gradually eased in terms of time practice. We might just be doing shorter multiple choice questions to gauge knowledge and understanding, and then building in the higher order questions as we go, as we cover more content. The thing that I've really noticed over definitely the past 3 years, is the need for more synoptic time practice. I'll give you sort of 2 examples that might help. There's the timed practice where we need to get the students to have an understanding of the different skills that are required for each question. So this type of time practice might be done at the end of a topic, let's say externalities. So we might do a time question where we want to see how much the students can write or read, what do they know about that topic in a certain amount of time. The next bit in terms of time practice is really the assessment schedule that we implement an assessment plan, if you will, of when are we assessing certain topics and how are we building in the different tiers of exam question into those topics. So I would probably start off, say, first 6 weeks of year 12, just really assessing knowledge, application, and analysis, because I want to know whether they've got the content. As we build through the course, maybe a November, December assessment point, I might have an assessment that more resembles a real style Edexcel question.
Okay, so students, as soon as they're taught how to write answers, which is by October in the first year, they're expected then to write in timed conditions. So what we will often say to students is, we expect you to write an evaluated paragraph within, say, 15, 17 minutes. And then from that point onwards, whenever they write a paragraph, we time them to write within that time limit, which stops them overwriting. We can also then provide students who need extra time with the time that they would receive in the exam to write those evaluated paragraphs. Now, obviously, in the first year, students work up to evaluations. So what we might do at the start of the first year, when students are writing a paragraph, is give them slightly longer to write, because it's going to take them longer to think about how to write a chain of analysis. But definitely by Christmas, they should be writing in a timed way. And then by Easter of the first year, they should be able to write an evaluated paragraph in, say, 20 minutes. From the second year onwards, from the get-go, from the first week, they write one timed paragraph a week. We then work on this through the year, so they're adding timed paragraphs to it. But then by February time, they then do a 2-hour exam every week. The idea being that we need the students to be sitting a 2-hour paper to ensure that they can complete the paper within 2 hours. We don't always mark these 2-hour papers in total, because that's a lot for the staff to be able to mark within a very short period of time. But sometimes the process of literally sitting and writing for 2 hours enables the student to identify that they are overwriting in certain areas, and that maybe there are certain parts of the specification that they don't understand as well as they thought they did.
So for year 12 or lower 6, what we first start off is we work on the basis of zero knowledge, and the early weeks we work on literally knowing your stuff, getting the basics, keywords, key concepts, getting students to start reading the news. And what we start in the early weeks is we start to have keyword tests. Then what we start to do is introduce exam skills sessions. Now, in our handbook, I tend to use my own version, the examiner's report. So what we do is have lots of examples of all of the different types of questions, which are annotated either by me or the examiners. And then what we do, so for instance, in week 2 of year 12, we would start off with a 4 or 5 mark question. And we would first of all model what the examiner's looking for, which is in our handbook. Then we would get them to do some practice marking on similar questions that they've already tackled. So we would then set a homework question where they would then get on with that. We would mark it. And eventually, after a week 3, we would start to give some snapshot tests where we give them some time practice of a particular topic to a 4 or 5 mark question. First test, and we do it as a 25 mark paper, where we're giving 30 minutes or with extra time up to about 40 minutes. What we do though is we give guidance on how long to spend each question is printed on the paper. So underneath the question we will give a guidance of how long, but we focus on as well those for extra time. The timing is adjusted and reviewed in a 1.1. So after say October, we then progress to longer questions. We start off with, in Edexcel term, the first real sort of level-based question, and we focus on the 10-mark question. And again, same format, model in class, do some peer marking, homework, and then a timed unseen question.
Are there any other strategies that you would use to support students with time management in exams?
Yeah, I think there are some key things that you can use, all dependent upon your exam board. So at the moment, we teach at the NXL specification A. I think what is important is ensuring that you don't overwrite or write too many paragraphs in particular questions, or if the question just requires a limited amount of analysis and application, the students aren't overwriting. Far too often as an examiner, I'll see in an essay question, students writing 3 or even 4 evaluated points when 2 would be sufficient. I also think it's very important that students use the PEE structure that many of them have been taught in high school when they're answering questions. So point, answer the question. Evidence, why do you think what you think? And explain how the evidence hits the point. I feel that if students use this structure, they're less likely to write incoherent sentences or waffle.
What I do is I very much encourage students to treat each exam as a set of, right, this is 10 mark, I've got 10 minutes, 12 mark, I've got 12 minutes, etc., etc. So lots of mini tasks. So otherwise, if they run over with one timed task, it just delays everything else. Be far better off gaining those extra 4 or 5 marks by starting a fresh new question and getting from 0 to 5 very quickly on the next question. So I do encourage them to absolutely stick to the time during the exams. We also practice writing down checkpoints. Moving on to the next question will gain them more marks than slogging away and possibly not adding much to the last question.
Yeah, so for us, the priority is securing knowledge first. And I think, my connection with other centres, this seems to be the issue. Most timing issues stems from uncertainty about what either the theory is or how to handle the questions. So what we do is we're planning drills. We might skeleton plan in under 2 minutes before writing. We often do sometimes do a question triage. What we sometimes find that some students can actually go against the usual advice of doing questions in order. And actually, we've got some students who are actually better off doing the big essay first. So we give an opportunity to practice that, particularly for these students with extra time, because sometimes that works better for them. We also have micro time writing bursts as well. We might spend 5-minute sprints for specific paragraphs, especially for 10 markers. Often what we might do for a 25-mark question is not actually give them 5 minutes to write the judgment. So they might reflect on an essay. We looked at the KAA and EV points, and then we invite students to write an essay. So that's a good way of getting through an essay, but focusing on the judgment. And that works really well to break down the components of how long we want to spend each one. I tend to use clocks, or whether it's a clock on a countdown clock in my classroom is where we can. And if I remember, is we try to get students to log their times. The students who have extra time are pretty good. That's part of their training. But we ask students to record how long or what time they started a question, because that really helps with one-to-one. Is why did you spend longer on that question?
So one of the main strategies I use is live modelling. So just to give you an example of how we might do this, let's say we take a relevant exam question from a topic that we're studying. So if we take labour markets from theme 3, so I'll have my whiteboard set up, pen in hand, and I'll write the question on the board. And then I'll break it up into the skill areas that are required for that question, K, AP, and EV, and then I'll repeat K, AP, and EV as in accordance with the mark scheme. So I'll model my thought processes as to how I would approach that answer within that sort of grid that I've described. One factor would be the real wage rate in the industry, for example, then apply it to the analysis. This means that, this is why. So the modelling is done so that students can see my thought process, see how long it's taken me to do it. The modelling is so that they can see how an expert would break it down. I don't know why I put quotation marks there, so inverted commas, sorry, so they can see my thought processes.
So in the early days in particular, I really focus on collaboration. So I get them talking about the question first and making notes, getting them to read the extract together so that they're pulling out the bits that they need. So there's lots of group or partner work. So they're actually kind of planning together. That planning, I think, is really, really important, especially in those early days, because they need to understand how much to include. But they also, because it's a new subject for a lot of them, they don't know what to include. So that teamwork, that collaboration is really, really important. I also use scaffolding, writing frames, kind of guiding them through how they might start the essays, what to include per paragraph. And then I ease off as the year progresses. So it might be quite detailed in the start. And then by the end of it, it's just kind of, this point might lead to this point. What diagram might you include? So I begin to kind of take the reins back.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Economics Teachers Staffroom.